guys, this is Miss Robinson and I'm going to show you how to sew on a button. So we're going to take our thread, and these are the two tails of the thread, and I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to try to string the eye of the needle and the thread. Once that's strung through, I'm going to take the two ends of my thread and I'm going to tie those together. That's going to be important because later on that will make it so the needle doesn't fall off. So I've tied those threads together. Now, in order to sew on the button, the first thing that we're going to do is make an X. So I'm going to move the button out of the way for a moment. I'm going to start on the bottom of my fabric. I'm going to poke my thread through. And then I'm going to make a diagonal. So I've made a diagonal with my thread. And then before I pull my thread all the way through, I'm going to separate my two pieces of thread just above or just below the knot. And I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go in between those two threads. And then I'm going to pull. And what's going to happen, I flipped my fabric over here, and what's going to happen is that's going to lock in that knot so the knot doesn't go through the fabric anymore. And then I'm back here. I've got the first part of my diagonal. I'm going to finish off my X. So I'm going to poke through and then go diagonally again and poke down. And that has created an X. So now I get to start putting my button on. So I'm going to poke through the fabric again, and I can see my needle is starting to come up. So I'm going to put my button right on top of the needle, or right through the needle. And I'm going to pull my thread all the way through. Now I'm going to make an X again. So I'm going to go to the diagonal, and I'm going to finish off that X. So now I've got the first part of my button sewn. I'm going to poke through the next hole on my button. And then I'm going to go to the diagonal. So again, I'm going to go to the diagonal, and I'm going to do this 6 times. So I'm going to make an X 6 times. So I'm going to poke through. It's going to be kind of like target shooting here, trying to get through those little holes. And then go to the diagonal and drop down. Let me show you. We'll pretend for a moment that I've done that 6 times. So the last thing, after you've made your 6 X's, we're going to wrap our string around that button. So I'm going to poke my needle through, but this time I'm not going to go through the button. I'm just going to go through the fabric kind of underneath the button. Then I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to wrap it around the bottom of that button. So I'm going to do that again. Wrap it around. It's a little bit tricky just because of the curve, trying to make the thread curve around the button so you can kind of see the curve. And I'm going to do that 6 times. Once I've done that 6 times, I'm going to take my needle. I'm going to poke it through underneath the button again, back through the underside of the fabric. Once I have pulled that through the underside of the fabric, then I just get to tie it off. Now, if your tail is long enough to tie, go ahead and use that. My tail is not. So this is how I'm going to solve that. I'm going to go underneath some of these stitches. Try not to go through the fabric. I'm just going to go under the stitches. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my thread until I leave a decent sized loop on this side. So here I've got a loop on this side and the rest of the thread over here. I'm going to take these 2 pieces and I'm going to tie a double knot. So I'm going to tie a knot, and then I'm going to tie a knot again. And when I'm done, that is going to make it so that that button stays on. And then all I have to do once I'm done tying is I'm going to cut off those tails. And there I have a button.